Hello, good to see you. Yeah, it's windy out here. I just thought I'd show you the outside world and go inside and talk. But because I'm live and I'm on Facebook, if you're watching this later and thinking, when's she going to get into it? It takes a little while for the live to come up and to go outside and to be shared and to be propagated out onto the internet. That's the technical term. And so while I'm working on that, I'd like to show you some things. And bonus, I'll show you. I've discovered a dandelion, and I mean, they're so bright and beautiful, but I will dig this out shortly after I've finished, because they seed and they're invasive. But look, this is the corner where I've been doing stuff. And you think she's been doing stuff? Well, there isn't much there because I needed to empty it out. So what I've been doing is making empty soil. There's stuff down there. There's stuff that's growing. That's the problem. There's been too much of this. So I've taken it out. But we still have roses. Let me show you the rose. It's blowing around in the wind. And yeah, see, it's moving enough that the camera doesn't quite know what to focus on. There you go. Now it's sharp. That's fabulous. I love iceberg. What else have we got here? The fuchsia is always so bright and fabulous. Look at that. The insides of the flowers are orange. I just love this plant and its leaves. And then these huge flower heads on the compassion rose. I don't know how well you can see it because it's got sunlight coming through it, but there's a flower. You just have to imagine the scent. The scent is beautiful. So there's a lot of flowers there, and I mean, everything's a little bit tatty, but that's autumn. And look, here's the cherry tree blowing in the wind. I love that. I could look at this for quite some time. This is just my front yard. And there's all kinds of things here that aren't perfect because it's a garden in transition. It's what happens when trees grow. Everything changes. Now there's all this shade. And there used to be roses here, and I took that out, and now there isn't lawn. There's just a bumpy piece of ground that grows weeds. But it's all changing, and that's fine, because I only have limited time to be outside here. So I do what I can with what I have. And so we have ferns in the background, which I just think they're glorious. And then there's this plant, which will be lovely in spring with white flowers, and another one of the same here. And we still have fuchsias, and I love these too. They're simple, the colours are so bright, and it's thriving here under the shade. And look, there's another fern, another New Zealand native. So this is just my garden. And it's changing because this used to be a small tree, and now it's quite a big one. So this is the world. Cherry tree, sky with lots of clouds up high, really fine high clouds. The sky isn't that blue because there's all this fluffy stuff up there. But I love watching it drift over. Here's the wind. So this is my world today. This is the garden. Let's go inside and I'll tell you what I've been doing. Because I've been, of course, this morning, this is my one morning that I get to spend writing words for this website, this godofme.live website that I'm writing. Excuse me, noisy bits. I'll hang my hat up later. Now that I'm inside, I don't need it. And I'll just set myself up here. Put the phone in its place so I can have my hands free, because that's what I like when I'm trying to explain stuff. And oh good, the phone's not too wonky. I don't really want to look like I'm on the air. So this morning I truly am breaking some new ground after a long time. I've spent months, really, probably about 6 months, writing a chunk of information which explains many things, but I wanted to get to the point where I could explain what emotional addiction actually is, but simply. And I know I say it, but I'm going to say it again. My ignorance to some degree is my superpower, because I don't know enough to get distracted by all the biology and the chemistry and everything else. I have learned a great deal as a layperson from Dr. Joe Dispenza. Really, I've learned so much from him about the neuroscience and the biology of change, and I've learned it because I've had to apply it in my own life, because I work on change every day of my life now. And just yesterday, 5 years, my 5-year anniversary of starting Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and I haven't skipped a day, and I can't imagine ever doing that because I know how I would be if I didn't do it. It's like I kind of have to do the house cleaning, I have to take care of the temple, I have to do this every day because I understand what's going on in my brain and in my body, and if I want to change, I need to use that information and apply it to continue my change process. That is just what happens. So where am I? Here's my little thing, and I've got a feeling that I might have gone live on the wrong profile, but anyway, we will see. I'm not going to stop now. That happens sometimes. Sometimes I forget to go live on my profile, and I go live on my page instead. And then nobody sees it because my page doesn't have much visibility. But I need my page. It's the God of Me page. So anyway, wherever I've gone live, here I am now. So today, what I wrote about, I've got into this new chunk. So I've actually explained emotional addiction and how we can get addicted to our own emotions to my satisfaction, which took me 6 months to do. And then I thought, okay, well, what next? And what next is, okay, well, obviously, how do we change, right? Because, you know, the world is full of information and do this and you'll feel better, and do that and you'll change. And there are so many voices out there, and there's so much information, and some of it's fantastic information and some of it's really shonky information, and how do you know, and, you know, all of that. And this is just me doing what I've learned and what works for me. And I'm very grateful that it does that. So, how do we change? What's the deal? And so I was thinking about that and thinking that, okay, so we have this awareness that we think and we feel and we feel and we think, and the thoughts that happen in our brain make a chemical change in our body, and we do that all day long. And how we do that all day long changes our body genetically. It does. It does. That is why, you know, it's a scientifically acknowledged fact that if you're stressed for a long time, you will eventually get sick. Because that's just what happens. If you stay in stress for a long time, you push the genetic buttons that create disease. It's just what happens. So, cool. Okay, we understand that. And you really have to watch some of the previous videos if you want to get that. I don't want to spend this whole video talking about that because I've done that for the last 6 months. So here I am thinking, excuse me, what's the next step? And the next step is to understand why willpower isn't enough. And I talked about that last week. Because will is a function of your conscious mind. It's a function of the brain that you use to think with and remember with and learn and experience and choose and, you know, all of that. But that's only 5% of who you are. The other 95% of you is memorized, and it's in your body. And there's a whole ton of memories that are in your body, and also there's a ton of memories that are in your brain that you're not aware of. And I'm not even talking about the unconscious stuff that you think, oh, you know, you see something and you remember something that you haven't remembered for 30 years. I mean stuff that's really, really, truly unconscious. That's subconscious. I looked it up. What's the difference between subconscious and unconscious? Subconscious is stuff that you can remember. You just sort of, you know, it's not there. You're not really aware of it a lot of the time, but you can remember it. Unconscious, you don't know, and you never know. And the reason why it's unconscious is it's because it's happening not in the conscious thinking part of the brain, and it's happening in the unconscious parts of the brain and in the body. And I thought, well, how do I start to explain about that? And then I started thinking about, well, where are the memories, you know? Because we're not actually born as blank slates. And I looked that up as well, you know, babies, they're born with 7 reflexes. Well, how do you have a reflex if you don't have some kind of nervous system to do that? There's actually an awful lot of stuff that goes on in the brain in the first 9 months of a baby's life, before it's born. And I looked up, when does the nervous system start to develop? And it seems to, I mean, again, I've done the lightest search. I'm not going deep into this. I'm just getting really simple facts. And the impression I get is that the nervous system first starts to develop maybe around 11 weeks. And then it just keeps going. And it keeps going for 25 years, by the way. There's enormous growth in the infant's brain up to the second year of life. But it just keeps going and going and going. And, teenagers have massive changes in their brains. It's part of the reason why they're a bit out of it sometimes, because the brain is changing so much. But actually, our brain really doesn't stop developing until we're 25, give or take. This is a long time for this amazing organ that we use for thinking and creating and everything else. It just keeps changing. And so, point I'm trying to make, perhaps wondering rather, hi Robin, lovely to see you, is that we do come with some memories already installed, like an operating system. Because you got to have something, you got those reflexes right. There's also a lot of wiring in the brain that's already running the body. The body doesn't run by itself. You have an autonomic nervous system by the time you are born. Well, that's been growing for about the last 6 months of the gestation. And, before then and during that time, your mother's autonomic nervous system is running your body too, because that dictates the environment your little body is growing in. So the point being that part of that 95% that we're not aware of and maybe completely unconscious to, we get before we're born. And we get it in the genetic programs that we get from our parents. And so then I thought, well, oh my God, I have to say what a gene is, because I have very carefully avoided talking about genes and genetics up until now. Because it's complicated, right? Who wants to go down that rabbit hole? So again, I looked up genes, what is a gene? And a few answers down, it's like, well, genes for kids. It's like, okay. And, the easiest way to say is, well, your genes, that depends whether you have red hair or blonde hair or black hair or brown hair. It determines your colour of your eyes, how tall you are, what kind of body you have. And that's true. But many of us think that that's the only thing that genes do, is that it tells our body what shape and size to be and how to run. And that's something that I thought for most of my life, but I learned something recently which was like a big surprise to me. It took a while to sink in, and it probably took a while to sink in because it took years for me to realise that it was actually affecting me. Because I didn't think it did, because I had no idea, because it was unconscious, right? And this is one of the things that I've been writing about this morning. But I had to personally experience it to understand it. Genes don't just encode for physical characteristics. There are things that our parents, and possibly even our grandparents, the opinion on this, and I haven't actually looked, but what I've learned is that the opinion on this isn't particularly decided. But at least from our parents go through things, they have experiences in life, they develop great skills, and they have experiences, and maybe they face adversity and they overcome it. And if you think about what we've been talking about for the last 6 months, about how we think and we feel and we feel and we think and we think and we feel and we feel and we think, and we change ourselves by what we think and feel the most commonly and for the most long time, right? The most often, the strongest, the longest. Those things will change how our cells function. It actually changes our genetic expression. So how we think and how we feel most commonly gets memorized in our cells. And talked a lot about that too, because the receptors on the cells will change to reflect the fact that there's been so much of this particular chemical that the cell's like, oh, I've had enough of that, I'm going to have fewer receptors for that chemical. So we know that who and how we are and what we do all the time changes us genetically. Well, it does for our parents too, right? That makes sense. You can actually think about that. So when you have the genetic material from your father and your mother, and everybody's got a father and a mother because they didn't get born otherwise, they may not have had parents, okay? But there is somebody who donated male chromosomes, and there's somebody who donated female chromosomes, and those came together, and you have a genetic inheritance. And when those come together, you get this unique mixing of characteristics. And the thing is that it's not just the physical characteristics that we inherit. We also inherit some memories, because those are things that helped our parents to survive and to do well. So if you go to nature, for example, just to make this perhaps a little clearer, and I need to reach for my clock or I'll lose it. If you look at nature, let's say you have a fish that's used to swimming in a stream, and the stream has a certain flow rate and it knows where to go and what to do, and its body is adapted to being in that kind of stream, that kind of river, that kind of water, that kind of current. And then maybe, as we're experiencing now, there is a change in the local environment. Hi Andrea, lovely to see you. Maybe there's a change in the local environment, and for whatever reason, the current in that stream becomes stronger. The water is flowing faster now. There's more water flowing. So that fish that's been used to water flowing at, I don't know, this fast, now is living in an environment that is this fast. And so it has to swim harder to go upstream. And it's got to go upstream, because if a fish doesn't go upstream, it's always going to go downstream, and it might want to stay where it is. So that means it has to work harder, and its body is going to adapt. It's like picking up weights. It's going to get bigger swimming muscles. But if that keeps happening over time, over generations, that fish is actually going to change the expression of its genetics, because it's going to say, well, I need bigger muscles and I need bigger fins. Because I've got a stronger current to deal with. And it's the same with our parents. And how I've experienced this myself, because I'm in this process of change and I'm overcoming myself, and I'm facing my own doubts and fears and challenges and things that I just do not believe I can do, and all that stuff that we all, that's, if we're on that path, then we're doing that one way or another. And I just thought, well, look, I can't find the thing that's stopping me, but I can't move past it either. And long story short, what I discovered is a thing that is really real. It's acknowledged, it's true. It's called intergenerational trauma. And, my father escaped Nazi Germany with his parents just before the Second World War. And there was a trauma before that. There was lots of trauma in Vienna, which is where my father's family came from, for years, and in fact generations before the war. So that was all there in the genes. And my mother had her own war experience over in Leeds in England, being very isolated, very alone, and there's bombs dropping, and all of that gets memorized, because it's very important to be able to survive those things. Things that are highly emotionally charged get remembered. We do. That's just how our brains and bodies work. Because if it's highly emotionally charged, if it's really good, we're going to remember it because it feels good and we want to do it again. But if it's really bad, we're going to remember everything about it, so we're better prepared to survive if it happens again. So that's just how we work. So things that are really powerful, really strong, the strongest experiences, and also the things that we do the most often, do actually get encoded into the genetic material that we get from our parents. And so in our early part of our life, this is a big influence. So, if you have a very fearful parent, it tends to be easier for you to be fearful. Doesn't mean you're going to be. You might not inherit it. And also, it doesn't guarantee that just because you got that gene, it doesn't have to express itself. So I'm in no way saying that all of our problems are because of our genes. But our genes are like a blueprint for a house. It's just a starting point. It's the thing that allows our body, gives our body most of its instructions to grow when we're inside that little, safe little cave where we get to be a small person and, get our body built. In that time, that blueprint is telling our body how to grow. And so that's how we get the body that we have. And, most disease is not from genes, because there's a 1 to 5%, I don't know why that is, but 1 to 5% of disease is actually from something that you inherit, and it's expressed before you're born. But in fact, the other 95 to 99% of disease is because lifestyle choices and toxins and all of that, but also if we keep thinking and feeling and thinking toxic or unhealthy or stressful or whatever it is, Muktananda, great to see you. then we are going to send the wrong signals to our cells, and our genes are going to express disease. It's just a fact. It's what's going to happen. So we train our 95%, we train our body to be a problem. But coming back to where do these hidden memories come from? Some of them do come from our parents. And so, I have done some work and continue to work with these. I call them the implicit systems in the body, because that's what they are. The implicit memories. You don't know that you've got them. They're there in my nervous system. They're there in my cells. It's memorized. Some of it's genetic. Some of it's just stuff that I don't know where it comes from, but it's there and it roars up and it's large. And so I'm doing things to change that. But the point I'm making is that some of what I had, I inherited, and I didn't know that. I didn't understand that that could actually happen. And I think it's useful to understand that it can actually happen, not to say, oh my God, it's my parents' fault. No. But to understand that that is there. It is a real thing. So I made some notes. Let me make sure that I've covered at least most of them. So yes, I'm talking about, at the moment, just what happens before we get born. Because part of our unconscious comes from there. It's the blueprint, it's the template. Doesn't mean it can't be changed. The other major influence on us that happens while we're growing in utero, you've got the genetic blueprint, right? But you've also got the environment. You've got everything outside of the womb. You've got your mother and whatever she's going through, whether she's being well supported or not. Because remember, you're sharing her bloodstream. Whatever's in her bloodstream is going to you through the placenta. So you're sharing her experience that way. You also get the information from her heartbeat, from the sounds that come in from the outside of the body. All of that's going on, and that's what I'm going to write about next week. This week I've just been writing out what's happening inside, and it's about the genetic influence. Because people say, well, what is it? Is it nature, which is the genetic inheritance, or is it nurture, what we get from our parents? And the answer is we are a combination of both. And when we understand that, we realize we have to work with both. You have to work with the body and you have to work with the mind. You have to work with the emotions. You have to, multifaceted approach. There is no silver bullet. There's just becoming more connected to yourself and finding ways for you that help you to change. So, what the hell is the unconscious mind anyway? Because it's like, we all hear people talking, oh, it's your subconscious. Well, what the hell is that? The unconscious mind, for me now, the way I think about it, is anything in your nervous system or your body that is doing something that you are completely not aware of. So, you're not aware, I'm not aware of breathing right now. I just do it. I'm not aware of the trillions and trillions of chemical reactions that are happening in my cells right now, every second. That just happens. There is an amazing intelligence that is running my body. That's part of the 95%. Do you think I can change that with my willpower and just say, go on, you're going to be different now? If we all knew how to do that, we could heal ourselves from any physical infliction in a moment. And there are people who have been able to do that. Now, I think there's probably still some people on the planet that can do that. But you've got to know how, right? So the 95% is what we have memorized in our body, and we've got a big chunk in the back of our brain and our chemical brain that's in the middle of our head, where that's all memorized too. We inherit that. The part where we're learning, experiencing, and we're building synaptic connections and all of that, a lot of that's happening in the neocortex, the third brain. It's the last brain to develop. It's the one that allows us to think, allows you and me to have this conversation. But that's the 5%. All the automatic systems that run our body and we have trained, we've inherited how that is, and then as we live and we experience and we learn and we learn and we learn and we have more experiences, we condition, we train, over and over again. It's like training a dog. We condition our autonomic nervous system and our body to be happy, to be sad, to be good at playing the violin. That was me for 20 years. To be good at gardening, to be really good at sports, to be really good at complaining, to be really good at insert your thing that you really like about yourself or really don't like about yourself. We get to do that, but we just don't realize that's why all of this stuff is hidden from us, because it's not in our thinking brain. So you can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to change that. I mean, actually, if you make a really, 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 really powerful decision, then you can just change it. But here's the thing. That decision has to have so much power behind it, so much energy, and I hesitate to say emotion, but actually, in fact, that's a big part of it, that it's more powerful than all of that habit that you've got in your body and in your brain. And that's why that, you know, the woman who sees her child stuck under the car, just, I gotta pick up that car, and walks over and picks up the car. Now, this is not a person who's used to lifting up the corner of a car, but the imperative from the mind is so strong that it will overcome the body and it will overcome the habits to say, no, you can't do that. So we have these examples in nature that show us that it's possible, but for most of us, it doesn't work like that. It certainly didn't work like that for me, because, you know, that's a one-off survival. That's a real survival situation. For most of us, it's much less obvious what it is that we're overcoming, what it is that's challenging us. And so this is the thing. If you understand that you can't just think your way out of it, and willpower on its own generally isn't enough. Something has to change in your body, and something has to change in the habitual part of your brain where that behavior that you don't like is hardwired. That's got to change. And so to talk about how that happens, I've got to explain how we get the way we are, which I've been doing, you know, it's emotional addiction. But now where does that happen? Well, it starts, you know, we get programs where, like, our operating system is loaded when we're little. And how do we unpack that? Because you've got to understand it if you're going to change it. So that's what I've been writing about. It's only a page and a bit of this text, but this is all the thinking. This is all the background that, you know, to distill this down into something really simple, which I have done. So next week I'm going to be writing about the environment. That's everything that's outside of the womb, your mother, and what's coming from outside of her, and how that can change a baby before it's even born, because it sure can. And then when you get born, of course, the genetic code is still there, right? The blueprint's still there. But then you have all this experience and all this information that comes pouring in. And then about 7 years later, you develop an analytical mind, and then you can start making choices about it. But your operating system has already loaded. That first 7 years and your genetic code, good chunk of your 95%, not all of it. And not a reason to say you can't change. But it is a reason to say, oh, that's what I have to change. And that's what I wanted to explain today. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for tuning in. If you're on YouTube and you did enjoy this, there will be more. There'll be another one next week. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'd really appreciate that. And thank you for joining me on Facebook. Check me out on Patreon. Check out the link in the description. I would love you to see what I'm doing there, because there's more on Patreon. And this is a journey, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it unfolds. I will look forward. Almost wrote a long comments. Yeah, Andrea. Well, you know, by all means, however and wherever you want to do it, I really appreciate participation. It drives me up. So, lots of love. Until next week, I look forward to doing this again with you. Bye-bye for now. I've got to wait for the slow connection thing to go away before I can hit the end button. There it is. Bye-bye.